What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So the first fight night that was in front of a live audience, literally since before COVID, just happened, and it happened in Ohio. Blaydes versus Dawkins. There was some really good fights on this card.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it's one of those sleeper cards. You know, obviously, when you start to come back and you're fighting in front of crowds, you want to kind of bring all the stops out. I won't say that they had the biggest names on this card, but man, were some of these fights entertaining and some of the best, craziest finishes we've seen all year. So I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, fights that maybe fly under the radar and maybe don't have the name recognition that people are used to seeing on big fight cards. But this one definitely lived up to the hype.
I always say it. Some of these cards where you look at the names and you're like, man, this is just not that great of a card. Like, that's the one to watch because they always end up delivering for whatever reason. It's almost like the fighters on the card feel like they have an axe to grind because their card is getting passed over by a lot of fans. It's like, you know what, we're going to go out there and put on a show. I don't know if that's it, but something happens when these cards come out that aren't stellar. They just turn out being awesome, awesome nights of fights.
Yeah, and it was really cool. It was a relatively star-studded event. You know, you had a lot of UFC, great fighters and legends. You had the Cody Garbrandts, Stipe Miocic, and then you had a Joe Burrow, who I'm not super familiar with from football, but apparently he's the cat's pajamas over in football. And so to see them, all those big names at a free card in Columbus, Ohio, I mean, it felt really cool. It feels like a lot of fans were there and they were just excited to be back in an arena where they can see something that's not a pay-per-view that's just massive, but something that the UFC can put on that everybody can really enjoy. And look, the fighters definitely brought the house down. I think from the entire main card really delivered. I mean, starting off some of the things with Matt Brown, that was ridiculous, but I do think that Curtis Blaydes did sort of own the night, and he really needed that victory, and I think he got it exactly how he wanted.
Yeah, Curtis Blaydes is now 2-0 in his last two fights. He was number 4 going in there last night against Chris Dawkins. A lot of us, including myself, thought that Curtis was going to use his wrestling and his really good ground and pound and just overwhelm Dawkins. He did end up overwhelming Dawkins, but it was just with pure striking. I don't even think he attempted or feinted a takedown the entire fight. He wanted to prove a point. He wanted to show that his hands still are good. And look, the reality is, unless it's like one of the absolute hardest hitters of all time, meaning A, Francis Ngannou, or B, Derek Lewis, Curtis Blaydes pretty much deals with people on the feet. He seems to have trouble with handling an extreme power puncher, but there again, who doesn't? I mean, who could absorb a punch from Derek or Francis and keep going? And so the fact that Curtis is still very young, early 30s, he's probably going to be number 3 after this. He's hanging around the top 5, obviously, and he's got this deep skill set of really good wrestling. His striking looked better last night. I still see a lot of promise for Curtis Blaydes, who I believe is a fighter a lot of people kind of wrote off.
Yeah, and, you know, Curtis did kind of seem like he was pushed out, and there were rumors that he actually was cut from the UFC, and then he just came back with his hat in his hand and said, look, my dream is to fight in the UFC. I don't want to go fight for other promotions, and they're giving me these offers, but if I can just take what I was making and continue to fight with the UFC, and the UFC loves to hear stuff like that, and they heard him out, gave him the opportunity, I guess renegotiated a contract with him, and stuck him right back into a main event. So, you know, he's obviously being treated well over there, and now he's delivering for the company, which is important. I feel like the sky's the limit for Curtis. I think he has the skill set to be a champion. Right now, if you told me Curtis Blaydes and Tai Tuivasa were gonna fight, I think with his skills developing on the feet and his overwhelming skills on the ground, he's a tough night out for all of these big punchers that are kind of on their way up. The Tom Aspinalls, that's actually a fun fight too. But if Francis Ngannou is all but gone from the UFC, and we still don't really know what that situation's going to, unravel as, with him out of the UFC, hypothetically, I think Curtis Blaydes could very well be the UFC champion. You know, not saying he can't ever beat Francis Ngannou, but you're not going to get another crack at him when you've been knocked out twice. So I think if Francis is gone, you've got a new number 1 contender potentially in Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah, and I loved the call-out last night. I'm always a fan of a good call-out, and he called out Cyril Gane. Now, Stipe was in the crowd, and he did give his respect to Stipe, the Ohio man, who got an absolute roar from the crowd every time he was on the camera. But he called out Cyril Gane, and he said, look, I want to do an interim title fight because we don't know when Francis is coming back. Me versus Gane. It's hard to really argue that Gane's not the number one contender in the division right now. And Curtis with a great win last night on a 2-fight win streak. I could see them making that fight. I don't know necessarily that they would put an interim title on the line, especially with John Jones being around. Nobody knows what he's going to do. And the Francis situation is still unfolding, and there's not been a whole lot that's come out on that. But I did like the call out because I like the Gane fight. Whether there's a title on the line or not, I think that fight could present major problems for Cyril Gane because Cyril is a very cerebral, accurate striker, and he breaks opponents down. But we did see against Francis, and Francis is no NCAA former wrestler. He can be taken down pretty easily and held down. I think if Francis can take him down, Curtis can easily take him down. And so I think for that reason, it could actually be a very interesting matchup that could favor Curtis Blaydes.
Yeah, and the heavyweights obviously have their heavy hitters, and he's been in there with all of them. But I think the new wave of these guys coming in with John Jones and Cyril Gane, they're going to have a tougher time dealing with Curtis Blaydes. I think that John's going to have to pepper these bigger guys, and he's going to have to run through them, after accumulation. He's not just going to one-punch KO some of these guys. That's never really been John's game. It's been just dismantle you for a few rounds and either get you out of there after a couple or take you to a decision where he just starts to run away with it. So, and same thing kind of goes with Cyril. He has to be perfect, and he's been able to do that pretty well. But Curtis Blaydes is one of the few wrestlers out there that is truly learning and developing striking skills very quickly, and he's not like a stiff, uncomfortable wrestler when it comes to striking. It seems like he's feinting and using the right things and developing skills like an athlete, not like a wrestler who's just trying to figure out how to get to the legs. I really, really am impressed with Curtis. I think Curtis 2.0 is all but here, and if he's able to utilize that striking that's clearly powerful and is getting better by the day into disguising takedowns and whatnot, we've got another top contender on our hands. And I think Curtis Blaydes' potential is still yet to be reached.
Absolutely. And talking about another top contender that I believe emerged last night, Alexa Grasso.
Yes.
Big fan. 28 years old, on a 3-fight win streak it is, I believe. And she won last night by her first ever submission. She submitted Joanne Wood. I almost said Calderwood. JoJo Wood. And, the first round submission, that's 3 losses in a row for the 35-year-old Wood now. So bit of a tough spot for her, but Alexa Grasso really owned the night last night.
Yeah, and Alexa's got some really good striking for basically all of women's MMA. She's doing really good things, and JoJo usually knows how to keep people at bay with good Muay Thai and teeps and push kicks, and then she's got a pretty good jab, and she's able to do check hooks, and she just knows what she's doing on the feet. She does seem to suffer a bit when it gets to the ground, and we saw that last night. Alexa Grasso's no stud athlete on the ground.
She's a purple belt, I think.
Right, yeah. So I think that JoJo is just a little bit too old to be developing the skills on the ground that she needs. She is a very entertaining girl. I love watching her fight, and I do think she deserves that main card slot that she's still on, even on a 3-fight losing streak. But, at this point, she is a bit of a gatekeeper, and they're going to be bringing girls like Alexa, who they see as the next generation of these female fighters, up, and they're going to be giving people like JoJo Wood fighters like that, which are tough nights out. And I think that if Alexa Grasso is able to control the fight against JoJo Wood on the feet and then go get a submission, she's going to present a lot of problems on the feet for pretty much everybody in her division, because JoJo definitely does have some of the cleaner striking in those weight classes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Valentina Shevchenko really needs a big-name opponent standing across from her. It's gotten to the point now where it almost looks like the odds are that of a mismatched boxing title fight, where you have somebody who's a minus 2,000 favorite to a plus 1,500 underdog, and the outcome is exactly what you think it's going to be. It's just a dismantling. And so Valentina really needs some young blood, some a formidable challenger, as it is, to come up and really push her and make for a big fight, put her from that co-main event right into a main event. And I believe somebody like Alexa Grasso, with another couple of wins, she's becoming a very big popular fighter in Mexico. We know that the Mexican MMA community is really starting to take hold. It's becoming big like the boxing community is there. So a couple more big wins from the young fighter Alexa Grasso. You put her in there with Valentina, you've got a big fight that a lot of people, not just the diehards, are actually really excited to see.
Yeah, maybe a double 125 title fight in Mexico City, or somewhere like that. You get Brandon Moreno in there against Davison Figueiredo, or some sort of configuration, because I do see Brandon Moreno getting to a title again and actually owning it. And then you get Alexa Grasso going to fight the champ, the juggernaut of the division, in her own home country. That would be a lot of fun for me. I think that Mexico MMA is definitely on the rise. There's a lot of big names that are coming out, and they kind of all have that infectious, fun personality. So I'm down for the Alexa Grasso hype train. I think it's legit, and I think she's going to be a future star for the UFC.
Yeah, I do for sure. And there's two more fights I want to touch on before we wrap. One was just the incredible fight between Matt Brown and Bryan Bam Bam Barberena. Bam Bam was the winner last night, but honestly, the real winners were all of us that witnessed that fight. I think it could have gone either way. There was some back and forth. Matt Brown admitted he took the foot off the gas just a hair in the last round because he thought he had won the first two. But I think Matt Brown has some of the most underrated Muay Thai in all of the UFC. His clinch work with those knees are devastating. How he just steps forward, marches forward, throws those at lead elbows, splits you open. I mean, he'll take you to the ground, and if you're covered up from strikes, he'll just start digging elbows to the ribs. He is a vicious fighter with a real blood in the water type of style.
Yeah, I love Matt Brown. He is an MMA character, and he doesn't mean to be.
Yeah.
He eats, sleeps, lives, and breathes the life of a fighter. And I feel like there's no other occupation that he could ever have in this life that would fit him more perfectly than an MMA fighter. I mean, he comes out to the heavy metal music. He's got the tough tattoos. He looks tough. He looks scary. And then he's devastating with the striking. Obviously, he's got some great wrestling and body locks and takedowns and stuff as well, because when he gets a hold of fighters like Bryan Barberena, because he's quite good as well, he's able to take those fights to the ground and get him where he wants them. But man, it doesn't get better as far as MMA legends go than Matt Brown. And the name's great, everything's great, but that fight was awesome. And I feel like Bryan Barberena, I keep getting his name tongue tied. Bam Bam kind of seized the moment and lived in the present time. He's like, I'm in the octagon in the UFC right now with Matt the Immortal Brown. I'm about to bring the pain just like he's about to bring the pain. And that's why we had such an electric fight. If there was any fight this year so far that deserved an extra 2 rounds to be thrown on at the end, it's this one. I wanted to see these guys go for another couple rounds because I think they would have kept the party going, and it would have been just as entertaining as the first 3 rounds.
No doubt. Yeah, and some of those tie sweeps that Matt pulled off in the early parts of the fight were just things of beauty. I mean, you really don't see that kind of mechanic in MMA because there's so many facets to MMA that you don't see, like a just beautiful, pure Muay Thai foot sweep that comes out of clinch work. But Matt Brown was pulling them off last night and doing them quite well. I could see the decision going to Bam Bam. My heart was wanting Matt Brown to win. I mean, he's 41 years old. He's in Ohio. Mm-hmm. The crowd was behind him. I was hoping to see him win, but I do like Bam Bam just the same. I think, and we talk about this all the time, how people call for people's retirements too early because they see an age number next to their name. Matt Brown may be 41, but make no mistake about it, Matt Brown's 41 is not your average Joe's 41. This guy keeps himself in impeccable shape. He obviously has the skills. And I think, honestly, when it's all said and done for Matt Brown, with the ability to display the type of technique and pure craftsmanship that he does, I think he's going to make just as good of a teacher, if that's the path he wants to go down, as he did a fighter. Yeah,
that would be a really great way for him to segue into the future of his fighting career, maybe outside of the octagon. But there's still a lot of fun fights for him to have. I would love to see Cowboy Cerrone, Matt Brown.
Yes.
I think that's something that would be a lot of fun. Anybody that fights Matt Brown at 170 is going to have their hands full. There's guys that are going to beat him and they would probably finish him, but you're going to have your hands full for as long as that fight lasts. So I can't wait to see what's next for him. And obviously, Bam Bam definitely gets to move on up into the, maybe not into the rankings, but up the totem pole and see there's something fun for him next in his career.
No doubt. And talking about moving up the totem pole, KaraFrance's performance last night was worthy enough to get a tweet from the champ Davison saying, hey, look, what you did puts Brandon Moreno on the sideline for a second. I want to fight you next. And honestly, I think with a performance like he had over the undefeated Askar Askarov, coming back from adversity, having his back taken in that first round and some real serious submission threats that he had to ward off, I was a fan of Kai going into this fight. He's one of my favorite new up-and-coming fighters to watch now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. City Kickboxing is doing a lot of things right. And, for him to deal with that first round and then come back with a vengeance and come back not zapped out of energy and have no gas left in the tank was very impressive. I think, he's a great frame for 125. He's going to be a problem there, but that's his home. And I think if he's able to bring that division up any percentage that he is, it's going to be good for the sport. It's going to be good for his division, and he's going to be a problem at 125 for whoever has the belt as long as he's in the UFC. And I think eventually he'll get a title shot, and he might very well be, taking that UFC gold right back to Auckland, New Zealand, or wherever it is that they're training these days. Who knows? But City Kickboxing could definitely put another champion into the UFC, and I'd love to see it. And I think KaraFrance has some of the highest potential of any of the flyweights.
Yeah, and I think the judges got the decision right. I think obviously Askar won the first round, and I think the second two went to Kai. I think he did the more damage. I think Askar was the more hurt fighter coming out of that fight. He took the bigger shots, no question about it. Askar will be back. He suffered the first loss of his career, but he's going to come back, and he's going to be a problem at 125 for a while. But I think a fight between Davison and Kai or Brandon and Kai will be fireworks. I mean, it will literally, because it's not going to be like the Askar fight where they try to take his back and submit him. Obviously, if you have that opportunity as a fighter, certainly as a champion, you take it. But I don't see it going that way. I see a fight between Davison and Kai being an absolutely bloody affair, totally entertaining, a striking contest that goes back and forth that maybe sees both men wobbled. I honestly don't know who would win. Probably I'd have my money on Davison just because he's proven over time that he's probably the best at 125 right now. But make no mistake about it, KaraFrance could find himself in a title shot before the year's over, and I think he's got a pretty good damn chance of winning it.
Yeah, with his style, he'll definitely bring a lot of eyes to the 125 division. Him and Davison is a dream matchup. I think that those guys could be fight of the night. That would be fun. They both get a little bit reckless and wild, which leads to great strikes, but also great counters for their opponents. So that's a fun fight. Sign me up any day. Also, Brandon Moreno doesn't deserve to get jumped, but if that happens, I won't be so disappointed.
Me either. Guys, thanks so much for watching this recap of the first UFC fight night in front of a live crowd in quite some time. Drop us a comment. Let us know what your fight of the night was. And as always, we will see you in the next one. Have a great day.
Peace.